Let's talk about something ridiculous. Have you ever looked at an old-timely portrait of a bloke with a massive beard and thought, that thing looks like a health hazard? Well, let me introduce you to Hans Steininger, a man whose claim to fame was growing the most absurdly long beard in history. And if you're thinking that doesn't sound dangerous, oh, just you wait. Because Hans' story isn't just about Guinness World Record facial hair, it's about how a single stupid mistake turned that beard into his worst nightmare. Hans Steininger, a man whose claim to fame wasn't political power, military conquest or some mind-blowing invention. No, Hans was known for something far more ridiculous and, as it turned out, far more dangerous: his absolute colossal beard. And when I say colossal, I'm not talking about your standard wizardly tuft or a hipster's carefully sculpted masterpiece. This thing was record-breaking, floor-dragging, ankle-tripping level of ridiculous. A beard so long it had its own potential health hazards. And Hans? Well, he was just a bloke living his life in 16th century Austria, completely unaware that his facial hair was quite literally going to be the death of him. Now, if you're thinking, surely a man growing something that long must have had some idea of the risks involved, then you'd be giving him too much credit. But to be fair, when you live in a tiny town like Brno am Inn, where the most exciting event is probably market day, maybe growing an absurdly long beard is just your way of keeping things interesting. People knew him for it. They respected it, maybe even feared it a little. I mean, it must have had leftovers for days. It was a local legend in its own right, like some fairy deity draped over his chest. By all accounts, Hans was a well-liked man. He was a respected town leader, the sort of guy people would come to for advice, and yet, despite his responsibilities, he still found the time to care for and, presumably, occasionally groom his monstrous beard. That said, he had a habit of rolling it up and tucking it into a neat little pouch most of the time, because, let's be honest, nobody wants to trip over their own chin in public. But that's the thing about habits. The moment you break them, that's when disaster strikes. One fateful day in 1567, the town was thrown into chaos. A fire had broken out. You can imagine the panic. People shouting, grabbing whatever valuables they could carry, and running for safety. Now, in a moment like this, most people would be focused on survival, making sure they weren't about to get roasted alive. But Hans? His biggest problem wasn't the flames. It was the fact that, in all the commotion, he had forgotten to tuck his beard into his usual little pouch. What happened next is the kind of thing you wouldn't believe if it weren't documented. Hans, in a rush, took a wrong step. His own beard, his pride and joy, his legacy, decided it was time to rebel. His foot got caught, he stumbled, and then, before he could do anything, down he went. A snap, a sickening crunch, and just like that, Brno am Inn's most famous resident was no more. Imagine the sheer absurdity of it. A man surviving plagues, wars, and all the other horrors of the 1500s, only to be taken out by his own facial hair. The townspeople must have been in shock. I mean, what do you even write on a gravestone after that? Here lies Hans Steininger, tripped on greatness. Not exactly the defining ending one hopes for. Of course, words of Hans' demise spread. The tale of the man who was quite literally done in by his own beard became a cautionary legend. His beard, which measured over 6 feet long at the time of his death, was preserved and is supposedly still on display in a museum. Because apparently, that's what the poor guy would have wanted after painstakingly growing and grooming that thing, is for someone to come and shave it off his chin in his eternal slumber. Till death do us part, I guess. Now, you'd think that this was the end of the story, but for some of the conspiracy theorists out there, something about Hans' death never sat right. Something about the details being too swift and convenient. And if the town's accounts are to be believed, well, let's just say not everyone was convinced that Hans simply tripped. Some say there were whispers that maybe, just maybe, someone or something helped him fall. See, here's where things take a turn. Most people accept that the death by beard story is fact. But you know how small towns are, people talk. And if you dig a little deeper, you start hearing things that don't quite add up. For one, there was conflicting accounts of how exactly he fell. Some swore he tripped on his beard, but others muttered about an unseen push and a sudden stumble. Not to mention the fire itself raised eyebrows. Was it an accident? Or had someone set fire to cause chaos? Even in death, Hans' beard became the town's obsession. His legacy wasn't just about facial hair anymore. It became a symbol of mystery. People swore by superstitions, claiming it held some kind of strange power. Of course, most of this was just local folklore, the kind of stuff that makes for good storytelling rather than actual evidence. But that didn't stop people from wanting to see it for themselves. Over the years, scholars, collectors, and no doubt people with strange fetishes have taken an interest in the beard, though more for its bizarre historical significance than any supernatural properties. While there aren't any confirmed cases of people being mysteriously blinded or cursed by it, let's be honest, if you saw a 6-foot-long, centuries-old beard in a glass case, you'd probably feel a bit uneasy too. It is currently being held in a museum in Brno am Inn, locked away behind glass, and maybe that's for the best. So, there you have it, the story of Hans Steininger, a man taken out by his own ridiculous beard. A cautionary tale? Maybe. A hilarious one? Absolutely. But let's be real, if you had a beard that long, you'd at least have the sense to trim it down so it's a foot shorter than yourself, so at the very least it won't turn into your own personal tripwire. But hey, let me know what you think. Was Hans just incredibly unlucky, or do you think there were more to the story than meets the eye? Just remember, for those of you in a rush, make sure to keep your eye out for those pesky 6-foot beards. I'll see you in the next one.